Right. Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the September 2022 edition of Fiction Fix Online. This event is being live streamed to the Finger on the Pulse, which is the Facebook group for Fiction Fix Online, and the Zoom video will be posted afterwards on my Helen Claire Gould channel on YouTube. So please subscribe and point all your friends to it. If you wish to join the Finger on the Pulse, please ask to do so or message me on Facebook to ask for an invitation. There are a few rules to review and some questions to answer, but the group is for readers and listeners. At our Fiction Fix live events, we used to have a books table. We can't do that with Fiction Fix Online, but for our authors reading this afternoon, please post your book details in the chat. And when I say book details, obviously, Noel, you'll be reading from a magazine, so post the magazine details, probably. Do include your website along with the link to the ebook and the seller for the print version. Prices are helpful, and an ISBN or ASIN if you have it. On Amazon Kindle, the ASIN should take readers straight to the book, and this can be done at the end or at any time during the show while you're not reading. And I'll post the details with the live stream and video or in the comments below it as appropriate. If you hear something you really like, please use the reactions. I'm just going to demonstrate that, if I can find it. Yep, here we are. To put up a heart on your little square of excellence, or a thumbs up. Either of those will do nicely. Thank you so much. That would be brilliant. Yeah, the button is pretty much in the middle of the bottom row of controls on the screen, at the bottom of the screen. Okay, so please now unmute everyone, because we need your hands to do some work. So today we have 4 returning guest readers, all from the UK. Unfortunately, Colin has found himself unable to join us this time. So Noel will kick off our afternoon with a reading from a story which is going to be, or has it come out yet, Noel?
It has indeed, Helen, yes. It's,
fabulous.
It looks a lot like a book, but it is technically a magazine. I will put the link into the chat a bit later. That's wonderful, thank you.
So, yes, so Noel will kick off our afternoon with a reading from a story which is to appear in Phantasmagoria magazine. So let's hear it, please, for Noel K Hannan and Alpha.
Thank you. I'll do a very, very quick preamble for this, because I might have shot myself in the foot by volunteering to read this story. Because it reads a lot better than it reads out loud. There are 3 different narratives inside the story. It's the story of a genetically engineered wolf who decides he wants to become a dog, basically, and goes into a scientific establishment in Alaska. And so there are different narratives in there, and it's also part of the story is written like a report. So I'm going to do my very best with it. And we'll see what happens.
Okay. And it's under the 10 minutes, is it?
It is under 10 minutes, yes.
Oh, just, fabulous. Yeah, that's brilliant.
It's not the whole story, it's about half.
It's just an extract. Yeah, that's great.
Okay. So my story is called Alpha, and I am Noel K Hannan. Alpha summons the pack. His wolf call lifts their heads from their hunting, their eating, their rutting, and their whelping. They come to him, converge on him, respond to him, obey him. He is their alpha, their master. Once he is satisfied, he has the bulk of the pack before him in the forest clearing. He clears his human-supplied throat box and addresses them. One of our number wishes to join humans. I'm here to gain thought of the pack. What do you wish? I'm your alpha, but do not rule by fear. The pack grumbles as opinion, agreement, and dissent is passed amongst them. Shortly, a grizzled old grey wolf is shouldered to the front. Alpha, am Thor. Once was Alpha, many winters since. Usurper spared me, and here be still, many winters later. Alpha inclines his great muzzle in a sign of respect. See you, Thor. Respect your presence. Continue. Thor settles himself onto the snow, sphinx-like. Challenging times, Alpha. Know not what the humans intend for us, as we ever did. Know not of what the humans intend for themselves, as they do not. Must make our own destiny. Wise words, Thor. Thor coughs and his voice box crackles. Who is the wolf who wishes to become a dog? There is a murmur among the pack. Thor has used a derogatory term for wolves who submit willingly to captivity and domesticity. Still, a young wolf moves his way to the front. It is I, Thunder. I wish to become a dog. Thunder is a muscular young creature, a potential future alpha, already a contender within his peer group, one of the first litters to develop the organic voice boxes genomically triggered by the implants and tinkering the humans applied to his immediate ancestors. He is organics. His language is subtly different and accented from the last of the first gen, including Thor. The current alpha is a hybrid, having been born with capability and then snared and augmented by the humans. There is little tension between first gen, hybrid and the organics, but it will come. Such tension and strife will always come where differences sow division. Alpha then may be glad to see him go, this potential future usurper, but at the moment he is an impetuous pup, and Alpha is keen to send him into the human camp, with the chance he may return at some point with information they may use, ways in which their relationship with the humans might benefit them. At the moment, that relationship consists of random kidnappings of wolves, an occasional return of those victims, and the odd times a wolf may happen on a lone human and against their mutual code, kill and eat them. It has been some years since that happened, and never on Alpha's watch. The status quo must prevail. 61 degrees north, 149 degrees west, Research Station Anchorage. SITREP 929, analyst Dr. Jason Faulkner, date time group 1700, 19th of July, 2079. Executive summary. Wolfpack Sierra Delta 009, seeded on the ANBP, Anchorage National Biotechnology Park, 1st of May, 2074. Observations of this mature pack continue using a combination of field visits, trail cams, drones, scat analysis, thermal imaging, and satellite surveillance. Sierra Delta 009 is one of the largest, most interesting and active of the ANBP packs. It is the only regional pack which combines first gen, hybrid, and organics. At 23:20 on 19th July 2079, Trailcam 007 detected a lone organics male, aged approximately 18 months, passing through the perimeter north of this research station. Exterior defences isolated in order to ensure safe passage. On-duty analysts notified to make assessment. Organics identified itself as Thunder and expressed desire to become dog. Subject Thunder reclassified as Whiskey Oscar 001. Whiskey Oscar 001 allowed entry to the observation pens and bedded down for the night. Raw food and water supplied. Private diary entry. I was not the duty analyst on the night Whiskey Oscar 001 approached the station, but the analyst who was and approved the entry of the wolf commented on how non-threatening and docile he appeared, to the extent that she neglected to wear her personal protective equipment. A disciplinary offence which I have not recorded in the visible report, but which is evident from the security camera footage. Many analysts have lost their lives after making this basic error of judgment. These are not talking dogs. My father taught me that from an early age, taught me to fear them as well as love them, and yet one day he did not follow his own advice, and they killed him. I have decided to call this animal Whiskey. The humans call me Whiskery, even though I have told them my name is Thunder. I don't understand why they need to rename me, but perhaps this is part of the process of becoming a dog. I decided to accept the name as part of that process. The night I crossed their lines, I knew that I was putting my life in danger, and I accepted that I may never return to the pack. Life is hard on the wastes. The snow is cold and the wind is fierce, and we can see the lights of the humans in the valley. Light means warmth. Their dens have hard metallic things which spit death, and I've seen wolves torn apart by those things. But I've also seen wolves approach slowly, muzzle down, supplicant, and if you do that, the humans will let you in. The humans let me in. They fed me and gave me a metal bowl of cool water and a soft bed to sleep on in a metal cage. There were dogs there, real dogs, 3 very different types. I can interpret their growls and whines, but I did not speak to them. They locked the metal cage, but I did not mind. It was warm and I was tired. The pen became dark and I slept. I am whiskery now. Am I a dog yet? 61 degrees north, 149 degrees west, Research Station Anchorage. SITREP 930, analyst Dr. Jason Faulkner, date time group 1700, 20th of July, 2079. Executive summary. Whiskey Oscar 001 has spent his first full 24 hours with us. He now shares his observation pen with a mix of working dogs from the station, the guard dogs, 2 German Shepherds and 2 Belgian Malinois, and the English Cocker Spaniel we've been issued as the virus detector. All the dogs are well trained, and although the presence of a wolf unnerved them initially, the big dogs coming defensively to the front of their cages and the Spaniel back into the rear, there was no other disturbance. The guard dogs are aware that if a human is in control of the wolf, there is no threat. Whiskey Oscar 001 appeared more frightened of the dogs than they were of him. Review of overnight CCTV revealed he did not attempt to communicate with them audibly. Whiskey Oscar 001 has accepted a collar and lead easily and allowed himself to be exercised by one of the auxiliary researchers today, wearing full personal protective equipment. Private diary entry. This is a very exciting development. This is the first time a wolf has decided to cross the line into the human world during my posting to this project. There have been others, of course, but it has rarely ended well. I do worry that our line of funding may be pulled, and this facility is violently purged like the ones further north and across the Bering Sea. But our reporting appears to be better received than most, and we have so far survived the funding cuts and closures. Whiskey may yet be the key to that continuing. Why encourage the wolves in? When this project was initiated, the intent was to create the ultimate working canine, a tactical companion who could converse in plain language and would be bonded with its handler for an entire working life, based on an organic platform far in excess of size and weight of any dog breed. Many political and socio-economic effects have been felt since the initiation of the project, not least the pandemics which devastated the world in the 2020s and beyond, reducing the global population by a staggering figure and making us fall back to some extreme ideas and concepts to make up the shortfall in manpower and labour. There is a well-respected school of thought that the wolf is responsible for human civilization. The thinking goes something like this. Homo sapiens and Neanderthal existed side by side for a significant time period. One was not a development of the other. They warred over territory and resources. At some point, the wolf was attracted to the fires of the Homo sapiens and approached, feeling the warmth, tasted cooked meat for the first time, and felt how good it was to be scratched between the ears where he could not reach. And so the dog was born. But you need to earn your keep in an early sapien camp. The wolf's superior sense of smell and hearing gave the Homo sapiens the tactical edge over the Neanderthal and assured their ultimate demise, acting as they did as combined early warning and weapon system. When I woke earlier, it was by the sound of the dogs being roused to their work. Unlike other dogs I have encountered, they have either been trained not to bark or have been stopped from doing so in some way. They all wear thick collars, so there may be metal things in there which prevent them from doing so. The big dogs are collected by big humans in snowsuits and carrying equipment, guards who patrol the perimeter. The small dog is allowed free rein of the station and is there to smell disease in the humans. This I know from the walk around the station, which happened later. A female human who called herself Kate, wearing lots of clothing, came to get me some time later. She offered a collar to me, held in a metal fist, and I placed my head in it while she clipped it around me. She attached a rope to the collar and led me out of the cage. She was not a big human, and I was almost as tall as her. I wondered if she could restrain me if I decided to run, but there were things on her belt which I thought might hurt me if I did. I don't want to run. I want to be a dog. She explained to me that she wanted to walk me around the station so I could see and smell everything and everyone. I replied with a single yes, and my speech felt and sounded clumsy compared to hers. I complied with the request, and we followed the little dog around the station as it made its morning visit to every human there, sniffing up and down their legs as they were seated at their tables, in places for them to eat and places for them to work. They always stopped to touch the little dog, but appeared nervous of it too. I could sense their pulse rates quicken as it sniffed them for disease, which would mean their isolation or their banishment. The little dog found no disease today. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Okay, so thank you very much.
Spoiler, it doesn't end well. It really doesn't end well.
It's quite an interesting presentation, as you said, when you introduced it, actually.
It's very different. It's very different from the last two stories I've read on there.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so will you please unmute yourselves now if you haven't already, and please let your hands do the talking for Noel K Hannan and Alpha. Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Noel. Okay, so now we welcome back Martin, who it was sometime last year that you read, wasn't it? I think it was last autumn, probably getting on for a year ago. So could you please make some noise for Martin Tracy, reading from his thriller Luna. Thank you all so much for muting yourselves during the reading.
Thank you very much, Helen. Welcome, everyone. So, yeah, I'll be reading from Luna, which is the third Judstone novel, even. Don't even know the name of my own character. Third Judstone novel. I'm working on book 4. Actually, worked on it a little bit this morning. But what is good about the chapter, I think, that I'm about to read, it gives you a little bit of an insight into the second Judstone novel too, because it reflects a little bit back on that, which is called Club 27. It's a single chapter, it's a short chapter, so it will be within time. So hopefully everyone will be able to stay awake long enough as I read it. 5 characters within there. The protagonist, Judstone, I've already spoke about, his wife, Brooke, and then there's the 2 friends called the Chamberlains, William and Crystal, which actually makes 4, actually. But anyway, I'm going to read it now. So chapter 2 of Luna, I Don't Want to Spoil the Party. Happy birthday once again, Double C. Crystal playfully slapped at Judd's arm. I told you never to call me that. I'm just trying to make you sound cool, Crystal, you know, give you a bit more street cred. After all, that's yet another year you've gone and notched up since you were born, isn't it? Are you looking for another slap, Judstone? And this time it'll come twice as hard. Okay, Mrs. Chamberlain, it is. Now you're making me sound like a school headmistress. Crystal will be just fine, thank you very much. Judd had taken to calling Crystal Chamberlain, the wife of his best friend William, by the nickname of Double C in a playful reflection of her initials since their marriage in Las Vegas. In actual fact, it had been a double wedding, with Judd committing himself to Brooke at the exact same Elvis-themed ceremony. This act of double commitment highlighted the deep friendship that each couple held for one another. The crazy weddings had taken place during a tour of pop star sensation Phoenix. Judd had been employed as a bodyguard at the time, sharing the life of a bona fide pop star who liked to party harder than hard, made it easy for the 4 friends to get caught up in the razzmatazz of it all, especially in Vegas. Not that either couple had any regrets at getting hitched since returning to a more, shall we say, regular lifestyle. These days, Judd was strictly a private investigator once again, as sadly his days of being a bodyguard to Phoenix had come to an end. Phoenix had been certified dead at the age of just 27, albeit amongst the usual conspiracy-fueled circumstances of an artist passing so young. Nevertheless, and regardless of what had really happened to the talented songstress, Judd found himself surplus to requirements for protecting a pop star who was either dead or who wanted the world to believe she was dead. In actual fact, as wonderful an experience as it had undoubtedly been, Judd didn't like to talk about his time rubbing shoulders with one of the biggest ever stars on the planet. The media sensed he had answers, but whether he did or he didn't, he at least could always protect the Phoenix that he knew and her reputation, even if he could no longer physically protect her. In truth, the offers of book deals, tabloid serials, and taking part in documentaries were at last beginning to dry up. The industry must have finally started to get the message. Judstone's stubbornness may have prevented his bank account from growing, but at least his integrity and loyalty to Phoenix remained intact. He would always view the time he had spent protecting her as a privilege. And there were still times when he sorely missed her. Today, the 4 friends who had shared that special wedding ceremony in sunny Las Vegas were now stepping out in overcast Birmingham, England, not long after eating a delicious meal at one of Crystal's favourite canal-side restaurants situated between the mailbox and Gas Street Basin. After all, it had been her birthday, so it was only right that she should have chosen the venue. In spite of his multiple sclerosis, William had been determined to walk along Birmingham's canals beside the woman he loved on her birthday, supported by walking sticks, as opposed to relying on his wheelchair. Unfortunately, his noble act of independence had contributed significantly as to why he had fallen into the water of the canal once the shots had been fired, but not before he had handed Brooke a small jiffy bag, whilst Crystal and Judd had been engaged in their banter nearby. "What's this?" she had inquired. "Just something you may need to give to your husband someday when I'm no longer around." "Don't talk like that, William. You'll be around for years to come yet." During that conversation, Brooke could never have guessed how poignant her words would become. William smiled. "Maybe, but let's just call it a bit of insurance just in case, eh, Brooke?" But I don't understand." "Shh. I don't have the time or inclination to discuss it right now. Today's a day for your celebration. Just trust me. It makes sense if you have it for safekeeping. I can't give it to lover boy Judd. He'd just lose his head if it wasn't screwed on." "Okay, thanks, I think." Brooke could see that William seemed worried about something, but the wink of his eye and forced smile of reassurance had underlined that it was not the time to pry. Still curious, Brooke placed a small package into her handbag. Amidst the panic streams of visitors to the canals, Judd immediately scanned the area in a desperate attempt to locate the source of the gunshots. His eyes fell onto a figure sitting beside a motorcycle. The helmet was unusual, with a flame emblazoned down either side of its shell, and frustratingly it covered the facial features of the shooter. Nevertheless, Judd somehow connected with the hidden cold stare that lay behind the visor before another round of shots were fired, which connected first with Crystal and then Brooke. In that split second, Judd couldn't decide whether to run to the aid of his wife or to charge headfirst at the gunman. The decision was taken from him as he felt a sharp pain into his stomach. Judd knew it was serious as he found himself hopelessly rooted to the spot and watched the blood spread across the lower area of his shirt. Not long after he passed out, the motorcyclist spun around in the blink of an eye and raced up the ramp out of Gas Street Basin towards his escape into Broad Street. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much for that. That's very exciting and canal side death scene. Okay, so please unmute yourselves and let's have another round of applause for Martin, Tracy, and I've forgotten what it's called.
Luna.
That's it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Brilliant. Okay, let's see who's up next. All right. Yes. So our next guest reader this time is Marise. She's been on a few times before, and over the summer she's worked really hard to get her novels ready for publication. She now has 5 novels out, but was it none a year ago, more or less?
Yes,
Marise?
about a year ago, yeah.
I'm dead impressed, actually. So will you please welcome back to the proverbial mic Marise Morland as she reads an extract from one of her latest publications. Now, it's got quite a long title. The Stars Are Ours, 1, Emergence. Have I got that right?
Yes, that's right.
All right. Please mute yourselves during the reading then, as usual. Thank you so much. So.
Right. I'm reading from chapter 2 of the book, and 3 of the main characters are still very young, and there's some teen angst going on.
All right.
Hymerel, who I mentioned first, is a symbol of male fertility and is celebrated every year in a street festival. Who calls on Hymerel? Calix's confident young voice rang out across lateral 4. His translucent bodysuit sparkled in the late spring sunshine. His shoulder-length hair, lips and fingernails all gleamed with gold lacquer. He pivoted, lithe and graceful, seeking the girl who had petitioned him. She stepped forward a little nervously. Calix lassoed her waist with a length of gold braid and drew her to him, pausing when their bodies were just a hair's breadth apart. Laura, with Edenian, watched the erotic pageant with determined cheerfulness. Everything was near perfect. Fine weather, lively crowds, the city festooned with flowers, tomorrow's concert well rehearsed, but she couldn't shake off a strange feeling of impermanence. Heimerel's music struck up for the final time that day. The masque was now concluded, and many of the bystanders began to wander off in search of refreshments. Laura and Edenian were about to do likewise when Trevone appeared out of the thinning crowd. "Dwell in harmony, citizens," he said formally. "Is Clemis not with you?" asked Laura a little anxiously. "No, she isn't back from Treva yet." Trevone shuffled his feet awkwardly. "I thought you should know. Clemis and I haven't been living together for several octos. Zana provided separate lodgings for her while she finished her course." Edenian sounded unsurprised. "Is there someone else?" "Not that I know of. We just drifted. She made other friends at the academy and blamed me when she was left out of the sphere shield tests. Now that you're both back in Aldermec, so you can hopefully patch things up," Laura said encouragingly. "Let us know if there's anything we can do." "I was hoping to call on her at the Akron tonight," ventured Trevone. "You don't need our permission for that. Your family, or as good as." Clemis paced restlessly about her room, which, after her lengthy absence, seemed to have grown smaller. She had planned to spend the evening with friends she hadn't seen for a year, but after her exacting and occasionally dangerous work at Treva, they had seemed effete and childish. She had left early. The kitchens were nominally off limits while the cooks laboured overnight on the banquet, but she had managed to smuggle out an adequate supper. As yet, she hadn't touched it. She admitted to herself, being unfair to Laura and Edenian by pleading tiredness, but they would only have interrogated her about Trevone, whom she had also been avoiding. She felt persistently guilty over the way she'd treated him, and at the same time resented him for being the cause of the guilt. Why, precisely, had she ended their pair bond? She was still fond of him, and he'd been a most reliable and attentive partner, except for that business with the sphere shield when he'd allowed his father to exclude her. The problem was of her own making, she supposed. She didn't want cozy reliability. She wanted passion and drama. A muffled impact made her jump. Something had thudded against the outside of her window. She went to investigate and saw the end of a sturdy rope swaying to and fro as someone climbed down it. A pair of sandals appeared, then two muscular legs clad in gold net, and finally there was Calyx, still dressed as Heimerel, and balanced precariously on the window ledge. "Well, let me in then, light of my life." She obeyed, opening the window very carefully to avoid dislodging him. "You loon, you could have killed yourself." "Not I." He swung himself inside and unclipped a small safety harness from his belt. "What's the other end of the rope attached to?" "An extremely heavy desk on the second floor." "Now, enough of questions. Don't I get a proper greeting?" Away from the heady atmosphere of the pageant, he should have looked ridiculous, but he didn't. In the half-light, he seemed eerily attractive and very masculine. "What are you doing here, Calyx?" Clemis asked, trying and failing to sound severe. "You didn't come to see Heimerel, so I decided to bring Heimerel to you. I think you need him." "Wouldn't it have been easier to use the stairs?" "Of course, but nowhere near as exciting." He sauntered across to the supper tray, picked up a decanter and sniffed appreciatively. "Fortified wine, if I'm not mistaken. Does Laura know you drink this?" "I don't have to ask her permission for anything," Clemis said defensively, hastily scanning for signs of parental intrusion. "Don't frown, sweet girl. You'll get wrinkles." Calyx's gold-tipped fingers smoothed her forehead. Laura's having a final costume fitting, and Edenian has his nose in a book as usual. Your perception must be better than mine, perhaps, or maybe I spied on them when I went to fix the rope. Calix smiled conspiratorially. So, having established we won't be disturbed, we'll take a glass of wine each, and you can tell me all about your year with young Master Dismal in Dreary Town. Clemmis stifled a giggle. You're always so mean about Trevone, and I'm entitled to be. He made my favourite girl unhappy. Calix sat her down, drew her close, and handed her the wine. Now, how am I going to cheer you up? Trevone, ascending from the kitchen entrance half an hour later, sent his thoughts ahead to inquire if he was welcome. The mix of insobriety and uninhibited unity seared both his perception and his pride. Quietly, he turned away and was about to leave the building when Edenian caught up with him. I'm so sorry about this, Trevone. I've no idea how he got in. Travel warned me he was trouble, but I'm afraid I wasn't vigilant enough. Opportunism laced with lies, said Trevone bitterly. He doesn't care about her. He puts on an act and she falls for it. Edenian concurred. All I can say is she'll probably regret it in the morning. That won't change how she feels about me. How can I win her back, Edenian? There must be a way. I wish I could answer that. You must know her very well by now. The things she cares about, the ideas she cherishes, a carefully considered gesture, based on what you know, could rekindle her interest. I hadn't thought of that, mused Trevone. Thank you, Edenian. I'll have to think it through, but at least you've given me something to work on. Now, before I finish this extract, I'd like to explain that the carefully considered gesture, when he makes it, is to invite Clemmis on a trip to Earth, and he really shouldn't have done that. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay, so Noel, don't worry. Oh, I think he's gone for a minute anyway. Hopefully he'll be back. Domestic disaster. So, right. Okay. Well, so good luck with the new books, Marise, which I was really enjoying the way that was going. And so please put your hands together again for Marise Morland and The Stars Are Ours, 1, Emergence.
I'm applauding myself here.
Why not?
Why not? I say, why not? Okay, so, and now we're going to join Helen B. I'm saying Helen B because I'm Helen G. So to distinguish the two of us, writing as A.A. Abbott. So please, a warm Fiction Fix welcome back for A.A. Abbott with her psychological thriller. This is her new book, Lies at Her Door. When did this come out, Helen?
In July.
In July. So it's not brand new, but it's pretty new.
It is pretty new. It's still got a lot of goals to achieve.
Right. Okay. Well, you know, I'm looking forward to hearing some of it. So many thanks to everyone for muting yourselves during the reading. Thank you so much. So great. Right. Take it away.
Hello, everybody. I'm going to read an extract from Lies at Her Door, and you will meet a lot of people in the next 10 minutes. So please focus on just 3 of them, Lucy and her parents, Jennifer and Sebastian. Jackson Crescent's semicircular garden had always reminded Lucy of a tangerine segment or a piece of Terry's chocolate orange. Number 13 was in a favoured position, its door opening onto the path that bounded the straight side of the mini park. A roadway arced around the rest. Sleek, expensive cars were already parked there. The street itself was quiet. In contrast, A glow of light and babble of conversation rose from the central area. Despite the excitement of the season, Lucy felt a sense of dread at meeting her neighbours. Jackson Crescent was a place for high achievers. Even as a child, she hadn't been exempt from the pressure to succeed, and now she was merely tolerated as Jennifer's carer. Her playmates had moved on to fabulously successful jobs, and as usual, she would have to listen to their parents boasting about them. Sebastian would be modest. He still seemed surprised that his son was a rock star. Of course, where Lucy was concerned, he had no bragging rights. He strode to the wrought iron gate that punctuated the hedge. Make way for 3 more. Following him, Lucy settled the wheelchair on flagstones near the gate. Although she'd worn Wellington boots, venturing onto the lawn would be foolish. It was more mud than grass in the winter. Jennifer's weight would swiftly see the wheels get stuck. Mince pie. Neighbourly Brian popped up like a grey-bearded jack-in-the-box. A baking tray appeared to float in front of him as he stepped out of the shadows. Lucy realised his hands were encased in black oven gloves. Yes, please. Lucy took one. I see Daniel isn't here yet, Brian observed. He can't make it after all, Sebastian said. A diary clash. Lucy was taken aback by the bitterness of his tone. He too must be upset on Jennifer's behalf. She comforted herself with the warm, sticky sweetmeat. This is delicious, Brian. You don't want too many of those. The speaker was a man she didn't recognise. His broad, tall frame was bursting out of a dark wool overcoat. Having dropped his bombshell, he sipped from a chrome hip flask. Hanging on his arm, another stranger giggled. A woman, thin, blonde, and heavily made up. She tottered on the edge of the flagstones, her stilettos unsuitable for the claggy ground. Lucy felt heat rise to her cheeks. She was painfully aware they were already plump with pastry. Brian rushed to the rescue. It is Christmas after all, he said, proffering his tray to the couple. Incidentally, Lucy, Jennifer, and Sebastian, have you met Zara yet? She's just moved in at number 7. The red-faced man helped himself to a pie while the woman waved dismissively at them. Pleased to meet you, she said, extending a gloved hand. Sebastian shook it. After checking the chair's brakes had been applied, Lucy did likewise. Jennifer remained slack-jawed and immobile. It took a huge effort for her even to move a muscle. She must be conserving her strength. And this is? Brian glanced in the direction of Zara's companion. Ted, my partner. Boyfriend. Ted clearly thought there was a difference. I'm Brian from the residence committee. He shifted his grip on the tray, pumped Ted's hand enthusiastically, and brandished the tray in front of them again. Do have more while they're hot, but watch out. I made these myself and used rather a lot of brandy. Don't drive afterwards. He winked at Ted. Brian never took offence, did he? Still, Ted and Zara weren't trying to control his diet. Why was Lucy's weight any of their business? Yes, please, I'd love a second one, she told Brian. Good girl. Put a third in your pocket to have afterwards. There's a napkin. Brian nodded at the pile of serviettes on his tray. Come on, Sebastian. Look, finish these off. Sebastian carefully wrapped the last pie, placing it in a pouch on the back of the chair. I expect Jen would like that later. Darling, did you hear Brian? This is our new neighbour, Zara. Jennifer's lips moved almost imperceptibly. No sound emerged. Zara ignored her. So, how long have you lived here? She asked Sebastian. Over 30 years. We moved in just before Lucy was born. Lucy wished the carols would begin. She hated small talk as much as Sebastian. He, she knew, only suffered it so Jennifer would have an opportunity to socialise. That chance was rapidly receding. Zara clearly wasn't interested. Brian's wife, Marilyn, bounded across the muddy lawn, flapping a sheaf of photocopied pages. "There's a running order and lyrics," she said. "We'll begin once I've found Margaret Forsyth. Have you seen her?" "No." Sebastian's eyes flicked around the throng before he waved a finger towards the gate. "There, just coming in with a dog." Marilyn's words were drowned out by the cries of small children. They gathered round the fluffy white animal like bees to a honey pot. "A Samoyed, isn't it?" Ted said. "What a handsome fellow." "Sasha is a she," Lucy said. Finally, the infants were persuaded to stand still and stop stroking the animal. Margaret began to sing, her honeyed soprano dominating the crowd as they joined in. They sang Silent Night, Away in a Manger, and others so familiar that Lucy knew the words by heart. At last, Margaret announced the pièce de résistance, the 12 days of Christmas. "Let's practice the actions before we begin," she said. "What did my true love give to me on the first day of Christmas?" There were whisperings between parents and children. "A partridge in a pear tree," a small girl shouted. "That's right, Evie. So when we sing about the partridge, I want you all to point to the old oak over there. Pretend it's a pear tree, okay? Now, who knows what happened on the second day?" Finally, Margaret finished briefing the audience with appropriate words and actions. Dogs, children and adults embarked on the song with gusto. Lucy felt quite exhausted by the time they reached 10 Lords a-Leaping. A token hop would have to suffice. She watched Sebastian and his fellow residents bounce up and down. "Ah, that's worked off the mince pies," Sebastian panted. "Oh dear, what's going on?" A hum needled its way into Lucy's consciousness, increasing in volume to a rumble. Margaret and the children around her wobbled as they mimed 9 drummers drumming. Margaret stopped singing. "Evie, move!" She shoved a child towards Sebastian. Sasha barked, almost tripping Margaret as she grabbed the hands of 2 more infants and pulled them with her. The flagstones trembled beneath Lucy's feet. A roar filled her ears, reaching its crescendo in a booming crash. She spluttered as a cloud of dust enveloped the garden. For a few seconds, it was all she could see. When her vision cleared, the garden was perfectly still, apart from fairy lights flickering in 4 tall trees. She blinked. Shouldn't there be 5? In the gloom, she made out a huge dark shape lying on the ground. Lucy gasped. It was the sycamore which had stood in the corner near number 13. If the tree had toppled in the opposite direction, it would have smashed into her house. Around her, Jennifer, Sebastian, and the rest of the throng were frozen like dun-coloured statues. She sneezed and the illusion shattered. Children began to sob and wail. The dog howled with them before deciding to whine at Margaret's feet instead. Sebastian brushed the film of dust off his face. Tenderly, he did the same for his wife. "There's no need to worry, Jen. It's probably just a minor tremor. We'll go back inside and get you cleaned up." He sounded confident, but Lucy supposed he was putting on a brave face. She shivered. Margaret yelled above the din. "Keep away from that tree. The ground is unstable. Parents, count your children, please." Ted raised an eyebrow. "Retired, is she? She's got you all under control," he added. "Thank goodness. We should still call the emergency services, though. Ah, Brian's on the case." Brian, phone in hand, pointed its flashlight to the base of the fallen tree. A yawning black void occupied the corner of the garden, as if a giant had nibbled an edge of the tangerine segment. It's a sinkhole, look," Brian said. "No wonder the tree came down." The small girl, Evie, shrieked, "There's a skeleton!" The other children began to scream. Don't be silly, Evie, Lucy said. Of course there isn't. Then her gaze flicked from Sebastian's horrified face to the deep hole under Skull, whose sightless eyes stared back at her. She realised she was screaming too. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Okay. So please unmute yourselves now if you haven't already and put your hands to work again for A.A. Abbott and Lies at Her Door. Fantastic. Okay, well, finally, I'm going to put this session to bed with a reading from the Zarduth Imperative Clanship. We're still on chapters 9 to 10. They're kind of a little bit mixed up because of the way I have to do things. But so the title of chapter 10 is The Battle for the Bikel. I realised the other day I haven't got a chapter title for chapter 9. So, but anyway, we pick up where I left off in March. So, just to recap, Hardy's gone down to the Labour camp on Declane after being captured as part of the plan to regain control of the Bikel. Hardy Brentshire shuffled across the sand towards the compound. He didn't have to try hard to appear a weary and dispirited prisoner. Just being shackled brought a mood change, and he still suffered from the effects of the bumpy flight. Besides, he was concerned that the mission to retake the Bikel be successful. The Kiai feared their masters, he observed. They scurried to carry out orders and poked their disruptors between his ribs or into his back from time to time, but without the brutality that betrayed enthusiasm for violence. Hardy suspected they acted under coercion from the conversation between his captors in the shuttle, which he listened to with no shame and a good deal of interest. Another species for the Voth to persecute, one guard had muttered. I wish it was the other way round. Yes, we should all get together. Kiai, Zarduthi, Declane, Havirtel, and perhaps, the second guard had shot Hardy a considering glance, even these humans. Hardy tried to school his expression so that his mental processes remained hidden. He wasn't sure if this was some kind of trap. You know the Havirtel won't be able to fight the Voth, the first guard said. They're too fragile. They'd be defeated in an instant. Who said they'd have to fight? They'd make great spies. I suppose so. The first guard looked at the other as if he'd suddenly had a major revelation. Hadn't thought of that. Hardy turned his head to look out of the port, but kept listening. Just think, we could go home. The second guard paused, then added, if there's anything left of Kiai. It was terrible last time I was there, the first Kiai said. If only we could have beaten the Voth when the Zarduthi came in with us. Be careful, the Voth might be listening. Nah, this is a Zarduthi shuttle. We didn't have orders to bug the shuttles. We should be fine. All the same, their conversation lapsed until they touched down. Hardy wanted to ask if they were serious about overthrowing the Voth, but he dared not endanger his own mission, so he kept quiet. And now here he was at the gate to the compound with the guards opening it to thrust him in. Aren't you going to unshackle me? Hardy asked. Oh, I nearly forgot. The Kiai grinned at him. At least Hardy thought it looked like a grin, though not a nice one. He held out his hands. The guard unshackled him, stepped back through the gate and locked it, and the two of them trudged back the way they'd come. Hardy rubbed his wrists back to life and took stock of his surroundings. As he scanned the occupants of the compound, he spotted Ayar with a tall, thin Zarduthi man and walked towards them. Ayar turned to watch him as he approached. Hardy remembered he was still wearing his spacesuit and wondered whether Ayar would realise it was him, as he wasn't as tall as a standard Zarduthi adult. He slid the visa's leaves back to reveal his face. Instantly, the air made him gag, doubled over, coughing. Ayar came to him at a run. Hardy, Hardy, he called, and there was no mistaking the warmth in his voice. Take it easy. The atmosphere's shit. Not a spaceman by trade, Hardy gasped. Don't try to talk. IR motioned to him to sit on the ground. It will get easier when you've been here a couple of days. No time for that. Message. Gasp for everyone. Organised campaign of civil disobedience, Hardy said. Steel plant and mine hit tonight. Must keep everyone out of them. And now this is a little bit later. Hardy scanned the compound, checking that all the humans were present. He'd already done a head count of the Zarduthi children. Periodically, he had to cough. His eyes streamed constantly. Who are you looking for? I asked. I can see Eddie is with his family, Robert is with Hauke, and Jaffa is with Devan, and I assume that's her parents, since Mill is also there, but I don't see Edith or Josie. They were with Hauke and Robert a moment ago, but I can't see either of them now. IR hesitated, then added, you look so worried. I thought it must be Josie you like. Is it that obvious? Hardy sighed. Only to me. There she is with Edith, talking to the Declaney. Why is she talking to them? Perhaps because of the damage to Robert's lungs due to his illness. He can hardly breathe here. The Kiai won't feed him because he can't work. We had a job to persuade them not to just shoot him, so we've all taken turns to share our food with him. We Zarduthi can supplement prison food with fresh insects, but you humans are a bit more delicate. IR shook his head. He needs oxygen. Hardy tapped the tanks on his back. Can we give him some of mine? It might improve his breathing. Help me out of this suit then. Hardy discovered IR was quick and efficient at getting him out of the suit. IR, you know exactly where to release catches and lift parts of the suit off, he spluttered. It's one of the first things a Zarduthi child needs to know. Of course, Hardy murmured. Edith and Josie have taken the Declaney over to Robert. Perhaps they think they can help him. IR set off across the sand towards Robert, Hardy's spacesuit tucked under his arm. Hardy trailed after him, but doubled over, coughing on the way. When he could stand upright again, he saw that Josie had turned to face him and that her mouth had formed a surprised O at the sight of him. They reached the group to find Edith describing Robert's symptoms to the three Declaney who had followed them over. You're making the most of your translation unit then, Edith, Hardy said, and rubbed his streaming eyes. Mais naturellement, Monsieur Brencher, she said. Now, please do not interrupt. This is vital and could mean the difference between survival and death for Robert. Would this help? I asked, lifting the spacesuit up. Ah, certainement. Merci beaucoup. IR and Hardy helped Robert into the suit. Soon he could breathe more easily. Hardy had time now to listen to the sing-song speech of the Declaney, and his translator had assimilated their language. He needs clean air, as we all do, one of the Declaney intoned. How much is left in the tanks? Several hours worth. I've hardly used any, Hardy said, but the sooner we can get him back to our ship, the better. Robert was ill before he came here? Yes, Hardy nodded, but he was well on the drugs Edith gave him. She's our ship's healer. We are also healers. We would help you, but for that we'd need to get to our medical facilities. It isn't possible now without a revolution down here. That's what I wanted to talk to everyone about. Hardy knew he took a risk if he included the Declaney in their plans, but felt he had no choice. My friends in the Zarduthi spaceships have probably taken the Bukel back by now. IR, Josie and Edith gasped in surprise, but Robert couldn't hear him with his helmet firmly in place. We must set up a strike or some form of industrial disobedience, a distraction, because Vagar and Afdal will attack the steel plant and mine tonight, and we don't want anyone hurt. Thank you so much. Okie dokie. Thank you. Right. Okay, so I hope all you fab listeners enjoyed all of that, and many thanks to all our lovely authors and readers. That's Noel, Martin, Marise and Helen B writing as A.A. Abbott, don't forget, for joining me on today. And thank you so much to our lovely friends and family studio audience for joining us and supporting our readers today. If you'd like to stay and join our chat with the authors after we finish, you're most welcome to join us. That part won't be recorded or streamed, so if you've put your video off, you can safely put it back on once I stop the stream and video recording. Okay, so let's applaud everyone. Thank you, that's great. Authors, if you haven't yet done so, here's a reminder to please include links to your books in the chat or send them to me afterwards by email or messenger or whatever, and I'll post them on my timeline in the Finger on the Pulse, on my LinkedIn, on my YouTube channel, Helen Claire Gould, and on my website, www.zarduth.com. Obviously, you see that Zarduth is connected to Zarduth. Do include prices, ISBNs or ASINs, stockists, national, international and local, and your websites too. Just a quick heads up, I was due to run a workshop for new writers in the Boston Book Festival at Boston in Lincolnshire next Saturday. That's the 17th of September, but that has actually fallen through. Nobody booked, so obviously the cost of living crisis is pinching over here. But I will be at the Guild, can't say it, at the Guild. Sometimes I just have to take my teeth out, turn them around and stick them back in again. Right. Yeah, I will be at the Guild Hall at in Boston on the Sunday, that's the 18th of September, to run a stall and hopefully sell a few books. And one of our previous guest readers, fantasy author Sharon Ihama, is also in the book festival, which, like us, champions self and independently published authors and their work. This has been Helen Claire Gould, comparing Fiction Fix Online and bringing both new and established writers in various fiction genres to your attention. So thank you so much for joining us. Fiction Fix is back now for a 3-month season, so I look forward to catching up with you on Sunday the 9th of October or the 20th of November, also Sunday, at 4 p.m. till about 5:10 p.m. October and November are full, so please get in touch. I'm probably going to have to postpone the January, February and March ones until I brought my next book out, but then I will run them. So please, if you would like a slot in the equivalence of those months, please get in touch. And you can do that on Facebook, LinkedIn or Goodreads messaging, or by email, and just ask me for a slot. So bye now till the 9th of October, and the Zoom video will be going up in the next couple of days on Helen Claire Gould channel. Okay, thank you very much, and bye for now. And authors, please stay and chat. And that everybody in the meeting, that includes everyone. Okay, so I'm just going to